it's crystal clear who the best team in Europe truly is.
We don't know anything yet. Anything can happen, and that's what you want from a league, right?
Fnatic are better in 2020 than they were in 2019.
Defensive flash from Larson and Vander was sent back to the fountain. Let's bounce once again. All over Road. 18 kills, 19 kills, and one more available. The stretching strike catches on Inspired. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He gets it. Pentakill.
And the redemption isn't going to land. Selfmade comes in though and lands with a hate spike.
Alright, Alfari flashed away from the supreme display of talent, but still got damage done. Nemesis is being eaten away by the cannon barrage. He stays alive long enough. Alfari in the 1v2 gets the kill.
I would have to say that I think OG is just draft kingdom.
Seven's gonna grab one. They want to find the follow-up, but he just manages to walk away. Big damage from DanDan. The follow-up, the Infernum, the snares are there. DanDan's looking for a victory lap as he just runs through the Excel lineup. DanDan, you god, what a cleanup!
Misfits and Mad Lions, they have met a certain threshold that if you do give them an inch, they'll take the whole arm off.
Follow Kazi! There are so many spears! The Ren needs to do a lot of damage though. Push the button! Manages to take down one of the cap. Kaiser and Kazi are doing so much work.
This is what you want from a rookie team right there, starting up with a bang, and I don't think they're gonna slow down anytime soon.
The Finn is in the back line. Inax almost down. That's one, that's two. Larson and Finn, it's just the rogue show here in the river. Finn gets another connection onto Lorwux. Can't quite find the third, but he flashes forward. It's a double. It's Finn. He's 20 years old, Venius.
I think Rogue are a top 4 team. You have players across the board that have the potential and the proven skill ceiling that they can punch with some of the best in the league.
If you want bad news, you know where to go. If you want good news, just follow G2.
Trying to put it down on Mad Lions. Jumping up to the back line. Kazi's still alive, but now he's shut down. It's Caps to take it. He gets one, he gets two, and he's looking for more. Perks on the chase takes another, and G2 will wipe Mad Lions in the river. True shot barrage. Yanko's going to jump into the pit. He goes on double. He steals it. Yanko, so much weight on his shoulders. Give me respect.
Welcome back, everyone, to the LEC Spring Playoffs. Hey there, all you cool cats and kittens. I am so happy to be spending my Saturday afternoon with all of you because we have a banger on the docket. Fnatic versus Origen, our second best of 5 of the playoffs. And my panel today, myself, Ender, and Froskuren. Hello.
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 Ready for the games.
He didn't even crack a smile when she said cool cats and kittens.
He typed an exclamation mark in Discord. I saw it. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that awesome TV show because we have enough entertainment planned as is. And before we get into today, let's talk about yesterday. I mean, Ender, maybe a first reaction from you because you weren't here to cast with us. Mad Lions, with maybe the biggest upset in EU history, beat G2 Esports.
Yeah, honestly, this was just an insane day for League of Legends because it started off in that game 1 and Mad Lions came out of the gate absolutely swinging. And even with that victory, you're still thinking like, wow, that's a pretty big upset, but you still don't fully believe they can go the distance. But they showed up in all 5 games, put on an amazing performance, and it was just this team of rookies that ascended on the day, and in scrim-style League of Legends, absolutely popped off.
Yeah, and just kind of speaking to that idea, the team of rookies that ascended on the day is what you say. It was the fact that across the board, everyone stepped up individually and as a collective team. Orome was playing tanks and carries, playing weak side exceptionally well. Shadow went toe-to-toe with Jankos and was styling on him in the Lee Sin and the Elise matchup. Humanoid played also tanks and assassins, was able to survive the onslaught of Perks and Jankos. And then the bot lane and Karzi and Kaiser showed that they are a top 3, if not potentially a top 2 bot lane in the LEC.
And Jankos even said it in an interview afterwards. He said, I was bested on the day. Shadow outplayed me. He was better, and he was a very big part, I think, as to why Mad Lions was able to complete that upset every single early game. Rather, he was where he needed to be, and he topped it off with a 16-kill Olaf game to earn him also Player of the Series.
Yeah, honestly, that game 5, it was such a Smurf performance. It looked like he was playing against Gold 2 in that one on the Olaf. He was an absolute monster on the day. And while, yes, that is the game, that's the performance that people will remember for a very long time, because this upset will be remembered for a while. It was all the other early games where he was still in his signature fashion, coming out with creative pathing, getting things done around the map. And that's the thing we always tell teams. How do you beat G2? Well, you need to be able to attack them early, and it starts in the jungle role.
Which is why it's kind of such an interesting discussion, because, again, you can only do what's in front of you. This was an online series that was played. That means some of the barriers to performance that we've seen in terms of being in front of an arena, being in front of a crowd, like, you don't necessarily get those same stage jitters. You're able to translate that success and that potential and that ceiling so much easier. So maybe we've seen, like, the Mad Lions fully unleashed, and that's the potential. You hear this idea of, like, oh, you know, this guy's a scrim god or this team's a scrim god, but we're just trying to get that to translate on stage. But G2 were also in the same situation, so I see a lot of the online discussion being like, what this victory means, and the reality is like, this is the situation that we're playing in. Mad Lions deserve the victory because of the way that they beat G2 that you just underlined there, Ender.
Yeah, and you're both playing in the same circumstances, but I think we don't have to beat around the bush. It is making a difference, and some players may very well show up differently because of the situation, but then it is your job as a pro player to adapt, so we will see how everything evolves. We're happy we can play everything out. That is, of course, our main priority. Now, yesterday came a bit out of nowhere, and I've had a lot of people saying, well, typical, always predicting G2. You guys did it as well, by the way, because we asked you on Twitter for your predictions for the whole bracket for the first round, and 85% of people on Twitter thought G2 would win, and I think that just shows how much of a perfect storm yesterday was.
Right, and if everyone predicts the upset to happen, it's not really an upset, right? Like, no one thought this was going to be coming, and sort of the great thing about our playoff format too is that we get to see finally like a top seed, number 1 seed in the LEC, lose their first series and now try to bounce back through the losers bracket.
What surprises me is that means like 15% of people are either Mad Lions fans or liars. Like, that's what that breaks out to.
All right, those are the fan predictions. They also predicted today Fnatic to win, 80% of the votes for that. But now let's take a look at the real bracket, which almost looks like a fantasy bracket if you didn't catch the results of yesterday. So, Mad Lions, due to their victory over G2 Esports, will now play the winner of Fnatic versus OG. And G2 is down to the lower bracket and will need to win 2 best-of-5s if they want to get to the final.
Now, the important thing here, looking at the brackets, you can see G2 sort of skipped a match down there in the losers. That is because, of course, they were the number 1 overall seed, so they would be the highest seed moving out of the winners bracket, meaning that the loser of Fnatic OG actually goes down and has to play a match against winner of Misfits Rogue before they can fight against G2 again. So they effectively get 1 game bye.
And if everything continues to go out kind of like how the fans are predicting it, how a lot of the analysts are leaning, I think the real loser here is Origen. Origen are like, we worked so hard to be top 3, and because Mad Lions upset G2, Mad Lions may have just snatched the spot from them. Now Origen really have to step up over Fnatic and force one of our big 3 teams into that 4th place position.
And I'm actually really happy that we have this new system and this kind of happened, because I think it'll show how cool the bracket can actually play out. And I think it already is. There's a lot of people now saying, but and G2 isn't out. But I mean, a lower bracket, that's how it works. And that's why it is so interesting, because you get a chance to fight back. But in the current state of G2, maybe they don't even get out of that lower bracket. I mean, that's something to discuss for another day.
I mean, I don't know, Shocks. Like, we try to please them in every single way. They say they want double limb. You give them double limb. They get mad that G2 are still in the tournament. Now we can have them come back from the lower bracket and ascend to victory. So,
call them
I
out.
don't know.
Hey,
I love the format.
And kinda, they're sort of technically in booths right now too, so we've got everything for them.
Yeah, I mean, everything's exactly how people want it. We're just joking around, of course. No, we're not joking around.
Are we joking?
Are we? I don't know. You know what? You have a mind of your own. You can make your own decisions, viewer. There you go. But I am going to tell you to watch something in 2 days, and that is the plans for EU Masters, because we couldn't have made up a better kind of PR situation for watching EU Masters, because this is where you're going to see the stars of tomorrow, and the proof is in the pudding, from the rookies of yesterday who upset G2 to the stars of tomorrow in EU Masters. It is starting all on the 6th of April, and the broadcast will be at twitch.tv/EU Masters.
Yeah, and while I encourage all of you to go and check out those games, keep in mind, this is also where scouts, analysts, coaches for actual pro LEC teams are also going to be watching this footage. You don't have teams, I mean, we always have these teams that come into the LEC and surprise. This year, it's Mad Lions, and it will be no different in 2021, 2022. The players in this tournament you may very well see as your next big stars in the coming years.
Yes, and from EU Masters and the stars of tomorrow to the stars of today, because we have found our all-pro team. And just as a reminder, all-pro team MVP, Rookie of the Split, Coach of the Split is voted on by a committee of players, coaches, LEC broadcast partners, third-party media, a whole bunch of people. But this is what they came up with for all-pro team. Alfari, Jankos, Perks, Rekkles, Mickey X, caveat, this is regular season performance-based.
Yeah, and that's the big asterisk to highlight, because I feel like a lot of people will see a lot of these G2 names across the board right now and will be ready to eject them for the Mad Lions, but it is based off of regular split performance. And I feel like a lot of these were actually pretty close. I don't know how your voting fell down, Ender. Was it this one exactly?
Yeah, I actually nailed these. All 5 players made my list, but it was actually really tight in some of these positions, like top lane especially.
Yeah,
actually, sorry,
What?
I think I didn't vote Mickey. I put him 3rd or something because I wasn't really convinced. So, and I was actually surprised that he came up, to be honest.
But again, since it is such a wide net of voting, I do want to hone in and kind of kick off with top lane in particular, because I think that was the most contentious. I think Alfari beat Whippo by something like 3 points only, so it was a very tight and very stacked race across the board, which I guess is kind of a good thing that we have so many star players that we can talk about in the LEC.
Go ahead, Ender.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that Alfari has been so dominant in lane especially, and Origen throws so many resources this guy's way in the draft and everywhere, but honestly, he shows up and he's been improving year on year here in the LEC. This split has been such a breakout performance for him in terms of not just smashing his own lanes, but transitioning that into the rest of the game and having some serious carry performances, and that's why I think he is very deservedly in the #1 spot in the top lane.
Yeah, and he was in a super stacked role. Again, it was really contentious. Whippo and Wonder, Odawamne even on the back half. I think he was kind of like a honorable mention. Some people even had him crack into the top 3 just because of the performance that he gave on Schalke. But it felt like the one position that was not in dispute at all was AD carry. And if you didn't have Rekkles, I actually think you were just trolling. I don't think there was any way to make any sort of fight for anyone other than Rekkles, because he's quietly been having probably one of the best splits of his career.
He's been absolutely smurfing it up, you know, and you say quietly, I say kind of with a bang almost too, because like everyone just expects him to perform, right? But if for a while now, it has been waiting for him to like really step into his own as other people on Fnatic have gotten a little bit more of the spotlight. I think this split on some of the new AD carry picks, he's been super, super solid. And then on things like the signature Ezreal 2, he's able to show multiple different styles, multiple different forms, but every single time you know Rekkles is going to show up and be the best player on in the bot lane.
And a word that really describes him, which you mentioned in rehearsal as well, Ender, is a timeless champion, a timeless player who has been through so many different iterations of his own roster, even been on another team. We don't talk about the Alliance here. We don't talk about that one. But, you know, different iterations of teams, different styles that came up within those teams, different metas, different champions, and he kept adapting and kept being that rock for that team continuously.
And that's kind of the key word for me, is the adaptation. It felt like so long ago that Rekkles always had this, you know, he's good on certain champions, but he specializes in a couple of them and he doesn't have the widest array to select from, and that's just not true anymore. Rekkles can do it all. He can play weak side, he can play carry, he can play the traditional ADCs, he can play the weird mages. Like, he is now evolved into his final form, and it has made such a massive gap between him and anyone close to him in that position.
Yeah, and it is, of course, that discussion of, is this Fnatic better than it has been before? And I think today we will start to see if there is any truth to that. And today we'll see some of our all-pros in action as Fnatic and Origen hit the Rift for an epic matchup.
Everything they do or try to do is by the book, and we are the complete opposite.
I'm on my job, I'm doing my thing, I'm do it again, they say whatever, now I'm just talking, you can score, I'm going
We probably have the edge, because I think in best of fives it's a lot about actually not playing by the book.
Fnatic are better in 2020 than they were in 2019.
Cooldown is Rajib sniper with the hook shot comes out.
Oh my god!
Alfari with the 1, 2, 3!
Alfari isn't just winning, he's dominating.
Best of fives against Fnatic are always really close. They always have really good players on their roster. You have to be on top of your game to beat them.
I don't think the play styles are going to decide the match. It's about who plays better.
Fantastic. Two legendary teams in the LEC with a rivalry that has been brewing since 2015. Of course, last year in 2019, Origen bested Fnatic quite unexpectedly at the time. But, panel, we are dealing with a very different beast in Fnatic 2020 so far.
Yeah, and it's the change up of the guard from Broxah into Selfmade. So obviously Selfmade formerly played with Nemesis on the Mad Lions when they were down in EU Masters, or I should say down in EU Masters in the ERL leagues. Coming into the LEC, they've now been reunited, and I guess kind of the question was, does this change anything? Like, losing Youngbuck, losing Broxah, does this Fnatic take a step backwards? And no, to me, it felt like they took 2 steps forward. Selfmade teaming up with Nemesis now doesn't make Fnatic a mid-jungle based team, but it means that they have the potential to be one, whereas previously they weren't. This is now a trident team. Fnatic can pick when and where they beat you on the map because they can carry from all 3 lanes, which adds that evolution to them to allow them to compete with the big dogs like G2.
Yeah, and it's so important, too, to recognize the fact that, you know, sometimes when you see teams make changes over the years, some of their strengths suddenly disappear, and I don't feel like that ever happened here with Fnatic. So many of the strong fundamentals, how they're all, you know, of the same mind, making plays, super responsive, you know, teleporting around the map, or even initiating fights, they're all in the right mindset. Like, these are all things that made them super strong in 2019 that have only carried over into 2020 and even leveled up in some areas.
Yeah, they seem like a very cohesive unit when you see them on the Rift. Now, as we move over to their opponents, OG, I think the characterization just runs through still, even with the new members. They have, of course, Destiny, they have Upset, they have Xerxes now, but it is still a very methodical team, a team that takes preparation above everything to have the right plan against their opponents.
Yeah, and if you sort of, you know, filter down into the individual players outside of just the team here too, you know, apart from Destiny, who hasn't played in the LEC before here, you know, these individual players at different points in their career, and some even now, have been able to make a very strong case for being the best or second best player in their respective positions. They sort of pulled them all together to make this team that, coming into the season, was supposed to be contesting for the top.
And the thing is like, we keep calling Origen contenders, but I feel like to Origen and to Origen fans, it's almost like a dirty word. They don't want to be contenders, they want to be winners. It wasn't supposed to be a team that just kind of collected all of the diamonds in the rough, or the guys that could have been but never really showed up, and put them together. They want to have their breakthrough moment, and it's just kind of a question of, when will they get there? And it's almost kind of bending towards if they'll ever get there. And that's the dangerous line that feels so bad for one of our big 3 teams to even be questioning.
No, absolutely. I think we keep going around that word of the cusp of greatness. They're on the cusp of greatness. They could get there, but as a reminder, the only person on this lineup that has won a title is Destiny in the OPL, and it's starting to get to that point where you really want them to push through when it matters most, get to that final and win a final. And I am not entirely convinced that they can do it with this lineup with the other teams, but the results from yesterday should light a fire under their butts and show them that if you show up on the day and if you play your hardest, and if you play maybe a bit differently than what people expect, you have a good chance of taking a shot at it.
It's kind of like, what evolution and what plans have Origen brought into today? Because coming into this, if we run exactly what we saw and expect from Origen and Fnatic, I think everyone's going to say, you saw it in the fan vote, that this is a heavy Fnatic-based game. But if this goes back to the idea that Origen are a team that are methodical, they plan a lot, they do better and theoretically better in best of fives, like they need to show some sort of growth or development, something different than what we saw in the regular split, I think, to go the distance here.
They absolutely
do. Yeah, that's the thing, though, right? Because you say they're supposed to be better in the best of fives. We've never seen this roster actually play in the BO5s. They could be better, they could be worse, and that's where you have to, just see how they show up on the day. This is going to be very telling for the rest of their playoffs run.
And this is what's so fun about playoffs. Teams can look completely different coming into those best of five. Someone who will be watching Origen like a hawk is someone who's been around since the early days, Peke. He will be watching Origen versus a team in which he rose to fame with, rather. Oh, back in 2011. I need a break.
Thank you very much, guys. And thank you, Peke, for joining me today.
Oh, thank you very much. How are you doing?
I'm really good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine also, thank you.
Awesome. You heard them. They were talking about the fact that last year, Fnatic and Origen met in spring finals. How do you feel about these two teams clashing so early in playoff this year?
Yeah, well, I'm very excited about it. Like, playing Fnatic is always really nice. They are this kind of team that plays on a bit of a crazy way and does weird things always. And I'm just really happy to play against my former team as well.
What do you expect when it comes to these two teams clashing compared to last year?
Well, the thing is that this team last year went really good for us. So I was really happy about it. This year, Fnatic seems to be a little bit stronger, which is going to make the game harder. Like, people is probably expecting Fnatic to win by the performance because they say that we play the boring game and that Fnatic will do more things. But I think that's also going to make it more interesting when people see that we are actually going to go and face them on a really equal match. I think it's not going to be one-sided for either one. So I think it's going to make it better for everyone as well.
I see. And style aside, with the new format we can have this year, adding the loser brackets, what does it change for a team like Origen when it comes to preparation and mindset?
I think it gives you, for the preparation, it doesn't change much because you take every match at a time. But I think it gives you a bit of freedom in your mind, even if you don't think about it as a player. I think you feel much safer when you know, okay, even if we make a silly mistake and we lose for any reason, we can always make up for it by practicing something we didn't or by improving for the next round, and then we will get them back in the next round.
I agree. It gives you a safety net in a way. And focusing on the series now, how do you see things developing? What would be the decisive matchup we should keep an eye on during this series?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really important to watch the supports always. Hili-san, I mean, he's known for having these shiny games in which he will probably put all the team in his back and carry. And somewhat similar for Wipo. I think Alfaro is really good in lane, but Wipo is also really good at leaving his lane behind and not caring about it and going to other lanes to get an advantage. So I think it's going to be important for us in the early game not to actually lose control, let them roam everywhere and let them get kills, because I think that's how Fnatic will win, by making the game chaotic. And I think as Origen, we like to keep it all under control, so it's going to be very important that we don't let it happen.
You mentioned support, and you brought Destiny to the league this year. What is your take on his development in the LEC so far?
I think he's been growing a lot as a player. Of course, when he joined, he was maybe more nervous to do stuff, or you could see that he was not comfortable. Of course, probably for him, it's a big thing playing with known players in LEC. But I think he's getting more and more confident every time, and he's not afraid to try and do mistakes, which is good to learn. And I think he's gonna be ready for this semi.
Yeah,
or
it's gonna
quarter,
be
or however you call
quarters.
it. Yes,
First round, let's say.
Yeah, first round.
First series for Destiny. Thank you very much, Peke, for joining me and for these answers. And good luck in round 1 against Fnatic. And to wrap this interview, we're going to send it over to you guys.
Thank you so much. Wonderful interview with Peke. Looking at the supports and mentioning Fnatic's strong early game and mentioning that they can't let it get too chaotic and out of control. And when we look at the play styles of both teams, I think for Fnatic that is especially good advice for Origen because their early games are incredibly aggressive and incredibly clean, and they can set up every single player to carry.
Yeah, I mean, what it comes down to is if Origen can control the pace of the game, they are going to be super, super confident. They're going to be in exactly the position they want to be. But Fnatic is not a team that allows that to happen easily. No, they are super explosive with the way that they do play their game. And honestly, turn game states completely upside down. They always are going to throw something at you that you didn't quite expect. So that's why OG are going to have to be super on top of their game today.
I feel like a Fnatic game is always going to feel more fast tempo, a bit more chaotic, but it's about recognizing when they have kill pressure and what to do with that kill pressure, whereas Origen don't necessarily take advantage of that as often as they should, or as often as the top teams like the G2s and the Fnatics that have what feels like a much faster playstyle. Origen like to prioritize their waves, they like to prioritize kind of the stable way of farming gold, of playing more of a pressure-oriented game and playing more of a wave and objective-oriented game.
Well, I hear a lot of the things that we know about Fnatic and about OG from you two, right? Fnatic being strong in the early game, they're very flexible, they have big champion pools, and what we've said about Origen for 2 years now, the fact that they're methodical, they want to play their game, this and that, but has there been no evolution at all on the side of Origen, or have they perfected this playstyle? Because when you say it like that, it sounds like they have no chance in hell to do anything today, and I don't believe that's true.
Well, the thing is, they have tried doing different things, right? Like maybe throwing in a Lee Sin to the mix where they have more focus on early game impact, snowballing individual lanes, but I actually don't think that turned into much of a strength for them. I think they do need to stick to their guns, and we have seen it be successful in the past, right? At the start of the season, they were on fire with their drafts, they were absolutely smurfing it there, and that led them to a lot of their victories, but I think they maybe lost a little bit of sight of what did make them strong, were experimenting with other things, and quite frankly, it wasn't working. I want them to go back to their roots.
I mean, frankly, to me, Origen haven't had the development that they needed to have. It felt like they figured out kind of what their playstyle was going to be, and as we look into the draft, they have picks that really work for them. Things like Nukeduck pulling at the Corki and moving away from kind of like the tank picks, the Nautilus and the Ornn that he was doing. Like, Nukeduck's probably one of the best, if not the best, Corki player in our league. But they also have a lot of draft weaknesses, particularly around their support pool. They really over-prioritize getting Destiny on a comfort matchup, and I think it also hamstrings them when you're forcing Nukeduck or Alphari to not necessarily get the best matchup that they need. And then they're also very reliant on AP junglers for Xerxes. You mentioned that, like, yeah, he's shown the Lee Sin, but I wouldn't say that Lee Sin is like one of Xerxes' most comfortable champions, even reaching for something like his Nidalee that he used to be known for. So these are things to watch versus a team like Fnatic that has so many versatile picks that flex across 4 to 5 roles in some of them.
Yeah, and not in the least in that top lane, and I think we want to put a bit of a focus on it. We heard about Alphari already. Alphari has had a stellar split so far, but Bwipo is very close behind him, if not better than him when it comes to the clutch at the end of the season. I would definitely say that just because of the impact Bwipo has had, the way he's cleaned up the amount he dies, the way he's able to completely throw a draft into disarray, bit all his possible picks, and just the influence and the roaming he can do on a map for Fnatic.
Yeah, I mean, Bwipo's been absolutely on fire, super standout player, and you couldn't ask for a more polarizing style compared to that of Alphari. Where Alphari is focused on the lanes, Bwipo is always looking to get out of the top lane, whether it's on, a champion with built-in roaming like the Pantheon, or just the way he teleports or even vacates his lane after getting a push. He is going to be super, super impactful, and what the top lane matchup is going to come down to is whether or not his roams do work out, because when you look at the stats right here, you can see, yeah, Alphari, he's crushing in CS, that all looks great, but when Bwipo is averaging 2.4 kills at 15 minutes, you have to reconsider, like, is 10 CS better or is 2.5 kills better?
It's dominating lane versus dominating map. What I find really interesting about this matchup is we've seen things like teams banning the Gangplank away from Alfari because it is one of his best champions. It allows him to be really safe in lane while also playing weak side or playing cross map with the ultimate, whereas Whippo has something like the Pocket Rengar pick that he'll leave a GP up, he'll take an Aatrox into it, he'll take a Rengar into it, and because he knows the matchup so intimately, he'll try to outplay it. And it's some of these mind games and some of these more well-known matchups between these top laners that I think is so interesting, because you throw a stone anywhere you hit on this map, there is going to be the mental game as well as the physical game that you see on the Rift.
Yeah, it's such an interesting matchup. I'm going to ask you for predictions, and I don't know if you are getting confused by what happened yesterday, but, you know, will it influence your decision-making or not? Was it a perfect storm or not? Because I know you were all leaning towards Fnatic, and I'd love to know if that has changed and why.
Look, G2 and 3 is not in this game, so yesterday's performance is not going to change my mind. I'm going Fnatic.
Yeah, I don't think an upset yesterday means that an upset will happen today. I'm right in line with the fans. I'm also going for Fnatic. If Origen do win, I feel like they can't just play their Origen game. They have to show us something that they've prepared, that next level of development, that next growth, that next step to take them from contenders to winners.
All right, let's see if that happens. Fnatic and Origen are looking to take a huge step towards the LEC title. So Medic, bring us into the game.
You have today a VODS, well, hopefully 5 games of it. It's Fnatic versus Origen. I'm Medic. I almost said I'm VODS as well. This is VODS joining me on the other side.
I have many personalities, Medic, but you are unfortunately not one of them.
You don't think
I'm excited. I'm excited for today's game. We've got Fnatic versus Origen. The analyst does seem to be very Fnatic favored. I think the obvious choice on paper is, of course, Fnatic, but you know, the obvious choice last year was Fnatic. Medic, in the spring semi-final when it was OG versus 3-1, everyone voted for Fnatic, except one analyst, of course. But it was interesting to see how well Origen played and prepared for that best of 5. And this is a thing you can never underestimate when it comes to Origen. Like, throughout the season, we've been talking about how good their drafts are. And yes, Fnatic